Thank you for coming to this presentation. My name is Johanna. I am a new graduate nurse, and today I will talk to you about the issue of understaffing and inappropriate skill mix in residential nursing home in Australia. The Aged Care Act of 1997 specifies that approved providers concerning the quality of aged care are to maintain an adequate number of appropriately skilled staff to ensure that the care needs of care recipients are met. However, this definition is quite vague, using words like adequate and appropriately, and let the aged care providers decide the right number of staff for care delivery in their facility. Indeed, in Australia, as opposed to strict regulations on childcare, there are no regulations on registered nurse to consumers ratio in residential aged care facilities. A survey by the Department of Health conducted in 2016 was aiming to investigate and provide thorough information about the aged care workforce. The survey findings show that only 15% of staff in aged care are RNs, and many of them have reported that they do not feel like they have enough time to spend with their consumers. On a survey conducted by the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation in 2019, an overall of 89% of the staff members in aged care facilities thinks that the staffing level was inadequate to provide appropriate and personal care to the consumers. In a survey from the Australian Nursing and Midwifery in 2019, staff were asked if they thought that the ratio of RNs to other staff members in the facility was adequate, and 75% of them felt like the ratio was not sufficient. When staff members received the opportunity to provide further details about the staffing issue, staff responses fell into two main themes. Firstly, inappropriate responsibilities were falling onto less skilled workers like personal care workers and enrolled nurses. Secondly, staff members identified a lack of suitable numbers of registered nurses, and both issues affect the safety of the residents and the health of the workplace, as overworked and pressured RNs rely on the other staff to complete tasks above the scope of practice. So why is it a problem? Inadequate staffing ratios are causing several issues to staff members and consumers in residential aged care facilities. Firstly, registered nurses are overworked and under an overwhelming pressure. They don't have enough time to deliver adequate care and conduct comprehensive assessment of the consumers, which can potentially lead to missed care, medication errors, and other adverse events. Falls and other unexpected incidents are not effectively managed because RNs and care staff members are too busy, which causes a significant safety issue for consumers. Registered nurses have to prioritize medically oriented care, like administering medication, changing dressing, and conducting observations. Other tasks that seem less urgent, like social support or behavior management, are consequently more likely to be missed, and consumers' needs and concerns are not always being heard. It was also reported by RNs that they feel like they spend too much time on paperwork and not enough time caring for their consumers. Indeed, nurses are the group of staff that spend the most time on documentation and other administrative tasks. Registered nurses who do take the time to deliver person-centered care and use their critical thinking while conducting assessment end up doing an extended amount of overtime to finish their job. The overtime they spend at work can affect their mental and physical well-being. There's also a delay in recognizing signs of emerging health issues with the consumers. Registered nurses don't get enough time with consumers, and other staff members, like personal care workers, don't always have the training and skills required to recognize those signs and symptoms. Inadequate staffing and lack of proper resources pressure RNs to use restraining methods to settle agitated consumers. During an investigation, an RN has told the Royal Commission that some residential aged care facilities use medical restraints on consumers because they do not have an adequate team to help those dementia consumers. Another issue is that staff members end up working alone rather than alongside co-workers because they are pressured to finish their job on time. Therefore, it affects the teamwork and breaches occupational health and safety policies and procedures. It creates an unhealthy workplace, putting staff members at risk of injuring themselves and consumers at risk of receiving unsafe care. Lastly, because of the lack of appropriate staffing and skill mixes, some consumers are transferred to acute facilities when they could be appropriately cared for in their residential nursing home if there were more doctors and RNs on site to deliver proper care. So, what is being done about it? The Royal Commission in Aged Care was created in October 2018 to ensure the safe and fair delivery of care to all residents in residential aged care facilities. The Commission conducts audits and reviews any complaints and comments from consumers, family, or staff members and investigates the matter. The Commission aims to improve the quality of care for consumers by addressing failures and issues in the aged care system. It was created following the Four Corner documentary on ABC, which explored residential aged care and revealed footages of consumers being neglected, abused, and controlled with medication. The Commission is a first step towards increasing the safety and quality of the care received by Australia's elders. Other campaigns, like Ratio for Aged Care Make Them Low Now, from the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation, have been launched, using real stories to show the public that aged care staffing is in a critical stage and urge the need to create fixed ratios for RNs in aged care facilities. Surveys are also conducted to deliver evidence of the positive impact of proper RNs to consumers ratio. The MISCARE survey, led by the Department of Health, demonstrated that the minimum skills mix requirement in residential aged care facility should be of 30% registered nurse, 20% enrolled nurse, and 50% personal care workers to deliver safe and person-centered care. And in 2017, the Senate presented the Aged Care Amendment Ratio of Skilled Staff to Care Recipients Bill, which introduced the concept of mandated ratio of skilled staff to consumers in the residential aged care facilities. Research showed that increasing the number of qualified staff like RNs does improve the care outcome for the consumers, and the demand for aged care services is increasing, and the aged care demand will continue to grow in the future because Australians live longer and the generation of baby boomers is aging. By 2031, a predicted 19% of the population will be over 65 years old, and there will be an increased number of 85 years old and older who are the primary consumers in residential aged care facilities. Therefore, more nurses will need to work in aged care, and it is estimated that by 2050, the aged care workforce should need to quadruple in size to accommodate the growing number of Australians who will require aged care services. However, understaffing, unpredictable ratios, and tremendous pressure on RNs in aged care facilities could be pushing RNs away from this specialty. Surveys show that fewer RNs are working in aged care facilities, as opposed to more and more assisted nurses and personal care workers. As new graduate nurses, we all have a responsibility to work within our scope of practice and maintain professional standards. As part of our standards for practice, we should provide safe, appropriate, and responsive care. But in residential nursing home, as it is today, nurses are struggling to maintain that standard. RNs are rushed and pressured to complete their task, when they should be supported to take the time to provide person-centered care for their residents. Furthermore, new graduates should appropriately delegate to their team and make sure that they are staying within their scope of practice. However, assistant nurses or personal care workers in nursing home often have to work outside the scope of practice to get the job done, which puts consumers and staff at risk and creates an unhealthy workplace. Therefore, as new graduates, we must help improve the quality of care by advocating for consumers and participating in the development of new legislation and policies about the staff to consumer ratios in residential aged care in Australia. For this presentation, online resources such as survey, reports, campaigns, and legal documents have been used to develop a profile of the contemporary issue of understaffing in aged care facilities. Studies are particularly interesting because they provide insightful information from a staff point of view in a large scale. The format of this presentation is an interactive and efficient way to inform new graduates about these issues because verbal and visual information was provided. The PowerPoint is a valuable way to summarize the content from the presentation in bullet points that new graduates will remember and use in their practice. Thank you for listening, and this is my references.